What if tomorrow somebody told you that Clash Royale still has a chance? What if I said that this game can recover from its death? I mean, before this last update, it was literally the worst state that Clash Royale has ever been in. How can it even come back? Well, that's how every YouTuber wants you to think. But what if I told you that there is something this game can do in order to be more successful than 8 years ago? Because I found a strategy that could and might actually be able to do this. And from what I've seen, nobody talked about it ever. So in this video I will go over why this game is dying, what I think the devs did wrong, and the plan that I have to save Clash Royale. Because this video is nothing close to any other Clash Royale document that you have ever seen. And very soon I will talk about stuff that nobody else would consider. But in order to get to that, we have to first go back to see how Clash Royale even got to this horrible of a state after starting in a very unique way. Because when Clash Royale was released in 2016, right from day one, there were two very massive issues with the game. Clash Royale was released 8 years ago on January 4th, 2016, and right from the start there were a few bad things, but at this time they weren't actually immediately noticed. So at this time the game actually had a pretty good start. The idea of having to rely on strategies and attacking real time was really cool. But we all know the only reason you're here is for me to talk about problems, right? And there are two very big problems that the game will have to eventually face. As you probably know, Clash Royale is and always was pay to win. Everybody always says it all the time. But this statement always sounded a little weird to me. Like, at this day and age, a very big part of games have some sort of way to profit. Even paid games have this. And for free-to-play games, it's basically 100% needed. So why exactly is Clash Royale being called so pay to win when literally every single game can be paid for? To answer that, we have to talk about the shop and the monetization system of the game. So pretty much, in the shop you can buy cards and gold. Even from day one you could do this. But the thing about Clash Royale is, unlike other games, there is almost no limit to how much you can buy at once. And that's because of Clash Royale's leveling system. In Clash Royale you need to collect cards to progress. And as you know, once you get enough of a card you can level it up and make it a lot better. The game obviously cares about how much time it takes, but if you spend money to bypass that time, the game doesn't really mind it too much. And this problem would be very big one day, but we will talk about it later. The other problem though goes way beyond Clash Royale, and is in probably all of your favorite games too. And that is boredom. You see, because Clash Royale is a video game, it's competing with other video games in the world. And because Supercell obviously want their game to be popular, they have to somehow keep their games hyped up and fresh. But why is this a problem? I just said the game was really good on day one. But this problem was noticeable from day one. The game was good and all, but it was pretty clear that it probably won't last forever. And Supercell saw this, and the solution that they brought up was updates. Just like most successful games, Clash Royale would receive new updates every few months. But for Clash Royale, things would be a little different. These updates though are very crucial for a game's long success, and you will see soon, they can also be very bad for your game. But for now, at the beginning of Clash Royale, they would actually make these updates very well. Just 2 months after it came out, Clash Royale would have another update that would add a ton of new things. It added a new rarity, new cards, and all sorts of stuff. But around this time there would be another idea around different flows of updates. This idea would be very efficient and won't be as difficult to make, and this would ultimately be one of the most important ideas to update the game. And this feature was balance changes. The whole concept of balance changes was pretty much one thing. Clash Royale can never be balanced. There would always be stronger and way better cards than others, and the time in the spotlight would be limited for every card. This type of new content was clever. You basically just didn't have to change any features or add any new stuff, and just mess around with numbers to shake up the meta. Balance changes were a very good way to add new content, but they weren't actually the only form of updates coming to the game. Clash Royale is still getting really good updates constantly, and the community really liked that. But one day, this statement will actually change, and after over 4 years of Clash Royale being such a good game, something was bound to go in a bad direction, which will later be the thing that completely ruined the game. So as I said before, Clash Royale is getting a lot of really good updates back then, and obviously everybody loved that. Getting new updates is always really cool and exciting, but when you have a game running for over 4 years, not everything can actually work out for you. And in the start of 2020, Clash Royale isn't doing too great. The game has been getting less popular since 2018, and the updates were getting a little bit underwhelming. card releases were slower, and there was just not that much unique content to add anymore. Everything had already been done, and for that reason, the first 2020 update would be delayed, and would come out half a year after it was supposed to. This was very problematic, because remember, without updates the game gets boring over time. This update was about a clan war rework, and it made people even more excited. Clan Wars was an abandoned feature with so much potential, so pretty much this update had to be absolutely perfect. Zero room for mistake. This update was hyped so much and waited so long for that there is absolutely no way it wasn't actually good. But when the update came out, it was the most disappointing update ever. But how? It was planned for almost a year. How can you mess something like this up? As I said before, the update was about Clan Wars, but the only things that came from this update just made Clan Wars worse. The gameplay was worse than before, the game modes were a lot more pay to win, and basically everybody hated this update. But that wasn't actually the only bad part about this update. As I said before, this update was massively hyped, and that's because at this time, Clash Royale didn't receive an update for almost 1 full year. But that update wasn't the only reason Clash Royale is in this state, because 1 year later, something arguably even worse would happen to the game. At that time, there would be another update that would come, and on that update, basically the entire Clash Royale community got lied to. The update was about the new champion rarity being added. This was a good feature, but it wasn't the only thing that would come. With champions being in the game, Clash Royale wanted them to be special in something else, and they would do that in 2 very unique ways. One way was of course their ability, but the other one was actually the reason this update was hated by so many people. Because when champions were released, the only way to get them was with a new level that was added, level 14. And for that reason and a few others, this update would be remembered as extremely scummy for a lot of people. But since then there were more and even worse things like this in Clash Royale, and almost a year and a half later, another update would come to the game. But this update would not really be like anything else, because this update instead of others was about the way you progress in the game, and unlike some other updates that helped buff that aspect, this time would be the exact opposite. The feature that helped you progress the most in the game would be gutted in nerfs, but instead of telling us that, it was said to be a buff to progression, which was just a complete lie. And on top of all of that bad stuff, there was another scummy thing that will ultimately kill one of the best game modes to ever exist in the game. And that wasn't the only mistake of the update, because one of the features that they did add, that at the time people thought was actually pretty good, actually goes completely against the plan that I have to save Clash Royale, and literally nobody even noticed it, but I'll come back to that soon. And on top of all of these trash and just disgusting updates, not even 3 months after this last horrible one, there was another update that will forever kill the hopes of why people don't think this game has a chance. And is ultimately one of the biggest reasons why I even decided to make this video. This last update would be about evolutions and a new level. Now, evolutions at first seemed pretty cool, until people actually realized that they are so game-breakingly strong, and so hard to get without spending money. It was so bad in fact, that people uninstalled the game just because they lost to an evolution. But if that wasn't enough, because this update was not just about evolutions, level 15 was also added at this time. And as I told you before with the champion update, people absolutely hate new card levels. And because this update was so bad, for the next 2 months almost every day there would be new drama and just negativity in this community. So much that YouTubers even started to blow up just by capitalizing on it. And ever since the summer of 2023, the trust that players had that this game can come back has just been completely destroyed and never built back up. And that is exactly why I made this video, to share out my plan on how to save Clash Royale. Before I start to talk about my plan and what Clash Royale needs to do, there are a few statements that I have to make. First of all, I am not a dev, but I do have proof that this strategy did and can work. And if you disagree with me, you
can just comment what you
you are just wrong. And second, this idea could have actually worked out once if Clash Royale managed to spot the opportunity, but we will get to that later. Now that that's out of the way, it's time for me to show you the stages of my plan. So let's talk about updates, specifically different types of updates. Don't get it? Well, these are the 3 main update types that the game has. There are the really good updates, the okay updates, and the bad updates. For example, an okay update is like the update that added magic items. A bad update is like Clan Wars 2. And a good update is like the update that introduced champions. But the beef squeezer, I thought the magic items update was great. And didn't you say a second ago that the champions update was so hated? Well, that's when we dig a bit further into the idea of updates. You see, the update that added magic items was great, but only for certain people. The players who already played the game liked this update because it helped them progress. But think about it, the update wasn't hyped, and it wasn't super exciting overall for a lot of people. It was just good, and that's it. And the Champions update on the other hand was bad for most current people, but was very attractive for new players. So let's go over what these updates had in them that got them in these categories. The Magic Items update added wildcards, books, keys, and other things. Now, imagine you're new to Clash Royale or played it before, and a friend tells you about this stuff, and how Clash Royale added a new progression system that made the game way better. It would sound pretty cool, but are you really gonna go in your free time and download the game? That's right, you're probably not gonna give an F about it. On the other hand, same situation, you don't play Clash Royale or maybe played it a while ago, but your friend tells you about this really cool feature called Champions, where instead of just putting cards down, you can interact with them and completely change the game with your ability. There is obviously a way higher chance that you will care and will actually download the game. And with Clan Wars 2, not only did no new player come, but already existing players just quit. But that's not the only thing that I have to say about updates. As I said in the beginning, as time goes on, people start to lose interest in video games. Even after a good update, you still need constant new stuff. And that's when my 3-step plan comes in. The plan to save Clash Royale. So to understand the first step of my plan, we have to look very briefly at a game that did something similar. And that is Brawl Stars. So at the middle of 2020, that game was at a peak, but the devs were not able to hold it for too long. And after that they had no idea what to do. So they saw this, and what they managed to come up with was very clever. Now, from what I've said about the update so far, nothing really stands out too much. The average person probably thinks that you just avoid bad updates, and that's it, and don't really care too much about okay and good updates. But what Brawl Stars did was shocking. Instead of just avoiding bad updates, they just kept releasing updates like normal. They made a competitive mode, completely changed the progression system, and added over 40 characters. Now, that is a lot of updates, but the game still wasn't getting popular again. Nothing about these updates stood out or was super hype. But 3.5 years later, Brawl Stars added an update that would add so much. They added a 5v5 game mode, a complete change of the Battle Pass system which was a buff, 3 unique characters, and so many features. So in short terms, it was a really good update, not an okay one. And that's when they realized that they can capitalize on this growth with even more insane updates. And right now, look at how much this game is succeeding. And that brings me to the first step of my plan. You need to make sure you handle the updates well. But wait, that's so obvious. Let me explain. As I told you, the OK updates are good for the game. They add new quality of life features, they help make it a bit more fresh, but they are not enough. So my solution is when the game is not doing good, you keep releasing OK updates. But how's it going to save the game, you may ask? Well, OK updates have one main change than good updates that make them something completely different. And that is that they do make the game better, but they are not hype, and also a lot less time consuming. So in theory, if you keep releasing OK updates for a really long period of time, and then you release a banger update, new and returning players will not only have the content from the banger update that actually made them come back, but they will have tons of features from months or even years of OK updates. And that is the first of 3 steps that is my plan. But the thing is, that isn't actually enough. And I told you that Clash Royale did actually try it and failed. And that is because there is one problem with step 1. And Clash Royale already tried something like this, but they forgot to do the second stage of my plan. So let's imagine Clash Royale already did step 1. Now what? The game is popular again, but you still need to constantly put out great content. So how do you manage this situation? Do you just keep going like normal? To understand what to do here, we have to go back to when Clash Royale actually did this exact thing. As I already said a few years ago, Clash Royale added a Champions update. This update was a really good update and was after a lot of OK ones. So naturally, if it goes according to my plan, the game would go popular, and it absolutely did. But what happened after that was very interesting. After the Champions update, Clash Royale didn't really know what to do. The game was succeeding after a really long time, and the devs probably weren't ready for it. So because of that, instead of trying new things, they just kept releasing OK updates. And so the game got less popular again. And that is where the second stage of the plan goes in. As I said before, OK updates are good for the game, but only for the dedicated players. But in this situation, Clash Royale had a ton of non-dedicated players that just came back for Champions, and that's pretty much the biggest issue that Clash Royale did after Champions. Instead of releasing a bunch of OK updates that won't keep new players, what they should have done is hard focus on really good updates. That way, all of the non-dedicated and returning players would have stayed instead of leaving, and if Clash Royale actually kept doing it for a long time, there is a much higher chance that all of these non-dedicated players will become dedicated. And when that happens, you can go back to the cycle and keep releasing OK updates. That way, Clash Royale, instead of having a ton of non-dedicated players leave because of OK updates, they would first turn them into dedicated players with good updates, and then when they become dedicated, the game can start releasing OK updates again. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that Clash Royale did after Champions. Because after that update, obviously the game was getting really popular again, but the next update was about masteries, and the next one was about banners. Two really OK updates. And that was the opportunity that Clash Royale completely threw away. But there is still a problem with step 2. How exactly are you supposed to release good updates and make the game fresh for casuals for a really long time? That's obviously very hard to do, and for that question, I have one solution to give out, and that is the third step of the plan. So the third step of my plan sounds a little weird, but it's actually a lot simpler than the previous two, and that is to use bad updates. Wait, what? Let me explain. But to understand it, we have to go back to stage 2. So as I said in stage 2, when releasing the banger update after the OK ones, you need to keep releasing bangers and have a ton of content. But how can you actually do it? Making constant bangers and making the time between updates good is basically impossible to do at the same time. And that's when the third step comes in. So my solution for keeping the time between banger updates good is with free progression events. But the beef squeezer, if the game keeps giving free progression, the economy won't be balanced at all, right? How can you even afford this? So before doing these, you need to realize the main forms of progression in the game, which are the Battle Pass, the Chest Cycle, the Season Shop, Path of Legends and Ladder, and Clan Wars. Now, I assume you like getting resources, obviously who doesn't, but you need to figure how you want and how the average player wants to receive this stuff. Think about it. Do you want to grind a pass or play Path of Legends? Most people would. But about stuff like Clan Wars and the Season Shop, these features kinda suck. So my solution is to use bad updates to completely gut the progression from bad forms. Stuff like Clan Wars 2 and the Season Shop are just not fun to do, and they prevent the game from using progression in other ways. And after you gut the progression, you move it to special events between updates. But wait, I don't want my progression nerfed. Well, it won't be nerfed, just move to better places. But the thing is, you have to be transparent about what you do and don't lie to the community. Stuff like the update for losers can't really happen again. Think about it. Would you rather play for season tokens or even touch Clan Wars 2? Or would you rather have more events between updates that will keep the game constantly fresh? Yes, obviously you would choose events. And if Clash Royale managed to move resources from the places that are not fun to get, and instead get them into fun places, it will make the game a lot fresh and better. But throughout this whole video, there is one thing that I didn't tell you about my plan, and that is that Supercell will never actually do it. Why, you ask? Well, that is because of one single problem, and that is that I only have 1,600 subs. And the thing is, Clash Royale don't care about me, but if you want Clash Royale to come back, and you want them to do my plan, you have to subscribe so I become big enough and this game will finally come back.